But I do think that there's also a significant lack of experienced magical practitioners out there. There seems to be a lot of beginners, but very few intermediate and advanced. And that's kind of a topic I will be addressing a little later. Okay, the next email is from a different listener named Matt. Do It Thou Wilt should be the whole of the law. I'm currently listening to Thelema Coast to Coast number 14, specifically the portion about the Goetia, something I have yet to work with. Permit me a bit of background. My experience in Thelema and the writings of AC is limited, but growing quickly. It has been probably 6 months since I discovered Thelema, and I've only been seriously interested these past 3 months. I still consider myself a bit of a neophyte, if anything, although my knowledge grows every day. However, my problem is this. When I get it into my head that it is in my best interest to begin to do some magic, I am stopped by the absolutely overwhelming amount of material. I have come to the conclusion that since magic requires a disciplined mind, yoga is what I shall take to first. And once I have a firm control over my thoughts, I would then be ready for magical workings. However, as I sit here and listen to Keith's inspired lecture on magic, I notice that he is unrelenting in his criticism of the non-practicing. I share his sentiment fully, and yet cannot help but realize that I am more than a little hypocritical. I suppose what I'm asking you is, at what point should I begin practicing? At what point should I seek Minerva in the OTO? Would you recommend I attempt to find a mentor of sorts? Is this common in the OTO? Of course, I realize that these things are up to me, but as of right now, I would most appreciate an experienced opinion. I sincerely hope you have time to answer my questions. Thank you. Matt loves the law, Lavender Will. Okay, Matt, I'll do my best to answer your questions. First, when to start? Now. It doesn't matter if you start out small and are just doing things like the lesser banishing ritual, the pentagram, or doing the lesser invoking ritual, the hexagram, doing the star ruby, doing any of these preliminary rituals. You can even just start out doing Liber Resh, but the whole point is you have to start practicing now. You don't have to be able to go and invoke goetic demons tomorrow. Start with the basic rituals. Start doing Liber Resh. Start doing the pentagram ritual. Start doing the middle pillar. Start doing these basic fundamental rituals. While you're doing those, start doing your yoga practices. You're not going to be able to still the mind if you can't sit still. So you need to start with your asanas. You need to start with your breathing practices. You need to start with your fundamentals and then build up. In regard to when should you join the OTO, that's completely up to you. The OTO is there as a service to you, and once you join, as you become a service to your brothers and sisters. So whenever you're ready to take that plunge, go do it. But in the meantime, I would recommend going and getting involved with your local body. Go meet the people that are there. Go to a Gnostic Mass. Go to some classes. Go to a talk. Get involved. Thelema is about individual development, but it is best done in an environment where you have peers that you can work with. That goes to your mentor of sorts. Should you have a mentor? Yes. But the next question is, what do you want to have a mentor for? If you're saying you want to have a magical mentor, that's kind of broad, and I don't know if you're going to be able to find it. So, I don't want to get too much into that because this is actually the topic that Keith 418 and I talk about on the show. But should you have a mentor? Yes. But you need to get very clear within your mind what kind of mentor you want, what you want a mentor to teach you, and what you're willing to do to get a mentor. Keep all of that in mind, and when you listen to Keith 418, we go into that a lot more. Okay, so I hope that answers your questions. Again, start practicing now. Work your way up to the harder stuff, the more complex, but you got to start with rituals now. You got to start doing your yoga, your asanas, your pranayama, all of your basic exercises. Start doing Liber Resh. Start banishing so that you can get control over your environment. Start doing the hexagram invoking rituals so that you can start invoking energies after you banish. These are the things that you really want to start with in the beginning. And they're things that are not that complex. On top of that, if you start going to an OTO body, whether you're a member or not, there's going to be a lot of people who can help you with those rituals, who can give you pointers. When you say, hey, when I'm doing the lesser banishing ritual, I'm doing the sign of the Emperor, but I don't know if I'm doing it right, or am I pronouncing these archangel names correctly? The OTO is a great resource. The people there can help you with that. So I strongly recommend that you go and get involved in a local body. You don't even have to take Minerval to do it, but if you find that the people there are people you click with, hey, take Minerval. It's an introductory degree, no obligation. And if you find the OTO is for you, great, take more initiations. If the OTO isn't a fit, well, at least you gave it a try, and now you can go on to other things. Regardless of how you look at it, it always comes down to your practice. You gotta do something, and you gotta do it now. All right, so let me go to the next email from Dan. He says, just ran across your show and think it's great that you're doing this. While I'm not a Thelemite, your shows have a lot of interesting information, and I've found a couple I've listened to very entertaining. Right now I'm listening to the new one, and I'm almost in tears laughing every time I hear the dog wheezing. Anytime. Thanks for putting out a great show. Well, thanks, Dan. And yeah, that is... I've gotten a few comments about the snoring dog from the last podcast. So, like I said before, I hope you all can overlook that and pay attention to the content. I think Greenfield has a number of interesting insights in that discussion. All right, the last feedback is from a listener named Will. He says, "Do what thou wilt should be the whole of the law. Dear John, first I'd like to thank you for doing the podcast. I have been studying Thelema for about a year now and have been a listener of the podcast from the beginning. You have helped me learn so much. I recently took part in my first Gnostic Mass and was baptized. Congratulations, Will. I will be receiving my Minerval degree in September as well as being confirmed. I have a question regarding the magical journal. I found it to be a hard time for me at first because I did not know where to start with it. For example, I wasn't aware what needed or should be written in there. It wasn't until I found my current group master that I was told. My question is it possible that you may take a few minutes on your show and discuss a magical journal, its importance, and how it should be kept? Thank you for your time. I will always give my continued support to the podcast. Loves the law, love under Will." Will. The magical journal, that is a great, great subject. As far as I'm concerned, I put everything in my magical journal. Because I look at magic as an integrated part of my life and not something that I kind of segment over to a side, I see everything that I'm doing involved in my magical spiritual life. So, what kind of day I've had at work, what kind of interactions I've had with a significant other, if I've had any fights, if I'm not feeling well, all of those seemingly mundane things I put in my magical journal because I think it gives a well-rounded view of where I'm at and what I'm going through at any particular time. I also keep a number of magical journals. Well, first of all, I have my written magical journal. So this is a journal I keep by my bed that I write in almost every day. I kind of summarize my day, summarize my practices, if I have any insights, if I've talked to anybody special, if I've done anything to move my projects forward. I record all of this in my journal. If I have any thoughts about magic or anything like that, I record it all. If I've done any magical rituals that day, I record that. And this is in addition to a different journal that I have that is specifically my ceremonial and magic journal, that I detail all the technical aspects of the rituals that I do. But those journals now are more about, if I'm doing Enochian or any other kinds of workings, I write them in that journal. If I'm just doing regular invocation or yoga work or any of that kind of stuff, banishing rituals and stuff, I just note it in my regular journal. One thing that I also do is I consider my email correspondence part of my magical journal. Now, this is something that as far as I can tell, is kind of unique to me. What I do is after every year or so, I go back and I sort through all of my emails for the last year, compile the ones that are worth keeping, print them out, and have them bound. And that's also part of my magical journal. And the reason is because I have a lot of unpublished correspondence between Crowley, Akkad and others, Crowley and others, and when I read this material, I get a lot out of it. And I realize that very few people today are doing any kind of written correspondence. What they do instead is they do emails, they do blog entries. And that's another thing I do. At the end of every year or every 2 years, I take my blog and all the comments and all the pictures and I print those out and I have those bound too. So my whole attitude is all of these things that I'm doing, whether it's my emails, my magical practices, my mundane day-to-day things, they're all part of my journal. They're all documents and source material about what I'm doing with my life so that I can then go back to it and see where things are going. And do I go back and look at those emails and things like that? I can't say that I do it that frequently, but I certainly do it, and I certainly have that material available to me. So it just depends on how far you want to go. Let's see, some of the other journals I have, I also keep my calendars. I keep notes about what I'm doing with my schedule, so I keep my calendars as part of my magical journal. And I got that idea from going to the Harry Ransom Center, Crowley's 1904 journal. The one I looked at the Harry Ransom Center is a big day planner, but Crowley has a lot of notes in that, so I started thinking about using the day planner as also part of my magical journal. And then lastly, I have some specific journals about subjects and like if I'm doing some research on a particular magical practice or a particular magical aspect, such as the Holy Guardian Angel. I have a journal where I have a lot of entries about that, which I'm doing some work on trying to reconcile some of the seemingly contradictory things about the Holy Guardian Angel and increase my understanding. So I have a journal dedicated just to that. So I'm a big journaler. I think that it is a very important aspect of the magical practice. I think it is something that you have to get disciplined into, and writing in every day if possible, if not at least every few days. And I'm a person who puts everything in it. Now, conversely, if you go look at the magical journal of Frater Akkad, you don't find his mundane life in it. And that was one of the things that I wanted to kind of pull out when I interviewed his son, Tony Stansfield Jones, on a very early podcast, I think number 4 or so. Jones was very specific about his magical practices being different from his mundane life. And so his magical journals that we have really detail his magical thoughts, his practices, and so forth, but don't talk about his home life, don't talk about the interaction with the children and his wife and things like that. So his approach to it was very different than mine. What I think is important in the end is that you come up with your own process, that you record as much information as you think you need, and I would encourage people to err on the side of recording more than what you think. And really, record everything from your emotions to, some people even record what they eat. In Gerald Del Campo's book, Nui on Magic, he talks about in the magical journal, recording what you've had for a meal that day, because everything that you consume is then processed into your body, into spiritual substances, and that can have an effect on what you're doing too. And this is not a new idea. If you look back at a lot of the medieval grimoires, when they were doing magical workings, they always said don't eat meat for a few days before so that you don't have the spirit of the animals that you're consuming in you and things like that. So all of these things matter. So I guess I've kind of rambled on enough about that, Will. I hope that's been helpful, and I'm eating up a lot of time, so let me finish up. So thanks to everybody who gave feedback. Please keep it coming. And like I said, the next podcast that's going to have feedback is the April 26th show, which will be the 1-year anniversary show. So I'm looking for feedback in email, and specifically the telephone. I want to have as many voicemails as possible from listeners giving comments about the 1-year anniversary. So, to get in touch with me, email podcast at Thelema Coast to Coast. Go to the Thelema Coast to Coast website at www.thelemacoasttocoast.com. You can call the new Thelema Coast to Coast voicemail number, which is 206-600-4216.